All right, welcome to The Outsiders. That's our new name. We changed the name from last week from the comment section to The Outsiders, mostly because, Alex, it turns out there's 85 other podcasts also called The Comment Section and nobody could find us. How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I think this is the name that we're going to go with. It'll be great. People will find us since it has all of our last names. And then also the comment section is like heavily dominated by a pretty controversial right-wing figure on YouTube. So it's probably good that we're trending away from that.
We want to get out of that. All right. So for those of you new here, the way this podcast works is we get together every week, and this is the podcast designed to recap the 4, 5, 6 biggest stories in business, tech, startups. And we go through, we recap them in about 35 minutes. We deliver some hot takes on them, talk to them. So you can skip listening to the news all week, and then you can get entertained with us making bad jokes about big things going on in the news. So we picked the big five biggest stories for the past week, and we're going to go through them. So number one, I'll just recap them real fast. Number one is Subway is planning to sell itself, the iconic Subway chain making subs, sandwich chain. Then number two, we're going to go into Sam Bankman-Fried's latest kind of craziness in terms of his public defense strategy, which I do not understand at all. But they also found $5 billion they didn't know they had at FTX. There was a fraudster who managed to defraud Chase Bank, I think, JP Morgan, for like $175 million. So we're going to dig into that hero's work. And then we're going to talk about the air travel system going down and Apple's VR headset as well, which is super rumored. And I forced us to do the Apple VR set because I'm so excited about it, because I'm definitely buying one. So we're going to start with Subway is for sale. Jared Fogle is disappointed, but they're going to make it happen. So Alex, tell us about that one.
Yeah. Can I just say something real quick? Like, I feel like I missed out on the last 2 years. I didn't do any grifting. I didn't scam anyone. My life would have been so much easier right now had I just embezzled $100 million.
There's still time.
Yeah, there's still time. 2023 is the year of the year that another Cohen goes
big
down.
grifter energy in 2023.
Oh man. Well, let's start with Subway. So, in very random news, Subway, the chain that sells pretty disgusting deli meat sandwiches, is selling itself for an estimated price of more than $10 billion. And I think, from what I was reading, this will be the second largest deal of this size. I think the only other one was Burger King was larger than the Subway deal. So it's very random. I feel like we haven't heard anything about Subway for years. After Jared, their spokesman, had his own falling out with the company and his own personal issues, they just feel like a struggling chain, but apparently they've turned around the ship.
Man, the thing that surprised me, I don't know if you guys knew this, Subway eventually got to be the world's largest restaurant chain and has now fallen to number 8, like behind
Wow.
Taco Bell. Like, just crazy.
That's still a huge scale.
Still huge.
They still have 21,000 stores in the US.
Yeah.
But their sales were, I think I was reading, they were 18 billion in sales in 2012. And now they're, I think, just like 9.6 billion or something last year. So their sales have fallen into the same category of their sandwiches. Absolutely fucking terrible. But it's still a valuable brand.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps if Bed Bath & Beyond doesn't work out, we can raise a whopping $10 billion and as a crew go buy out Subway next week.
If our GoFundMe from the last episode where we tried to crowdfund $100 million, I think we've raised $9 so far. But if that surpasses its goal, we'll be able to afford Subway and be the kings of Subway, which is great.
I mean, is the whole problem with Subway that the sandwiches are nasty? That's the problem, right?
I think if they also, I don't know if you guys know, I'm a huge lover of Publix subs. Does everyone know what a Publix sub is? Or do
No.
I need to? Okay, I'll explain. So if you grew up in Florida, you live next to a Publix, and Publix is like this incredible grocery chain. Everyone's nice. They like give back to their community. It's a pleasure shopping there. And so they have a deli section, and in their deli section, they sell these like $8 subs, and they're incredible. Like half a pound of meat. It's all boar's head. So when you grow up in Florida, you just love Publix subs, and Subway could have been the pub sub chain. And instead, they bought the lowest quality meats and served them on the lowest quality bread. And, but they grew. I mean, America likes their chains.
This Eat Fresh Refresh campaign was interesting from 2021, where they tried to like turn the brand around. And actually, I was reading about this. The the same two families, I think, own 100% of the corporate brand today. They started this in 1965, and the first outside CEO came in 2019, and within 3 years, they're already looking to sell. So, I mean, that's just like classic, like entrepreneurial story, right? Like these two people, these two families, they build this business together. Sales go up. They become the number one restaurant in the US. I think one of the biggest franchises in the world. It's like 37,000 locations. And 3 years after the main guy dies, it, all goes to shit, which is pretty wild.
It's so fascinating. And they just blew it. Like they had such a huge lead. And like for stuff like this, it always comes back to me. It's like, hey, like, why isn't our like chain doing very well? Why is Burger King like doing poorly? And I'll tell you why. The burgers suck. And it's like the same thing with Subway. Like just focus on what's going on. And it's also why I'm very bearish on like what's going on with Tesla right now. Because I drove one the other day and I was like, this is not worth $85,000. It's not a very good car. Oh, anyway, did I just get us canceled again? It's only been 5 minutes.
Over and over again.
I do think the thing that I find interesting is they're struggling, and yet they also have consolidated their menu. So from what I was reading, they've like limited the number. They're rotating their sub menu each week. They've limited the number of ingredients they're buying. They've gone to higher quality bread, and I don't think it's been the turnaround success story that they were looking for.
Man, I hope it gets better. All right, that wasn't as funny.
If we buy it, it will be.
We'll go from there. Okay, let's go move on to something funnier. Sam Bankman-Fried deciding to defend himself in public. So, Chris, you're going to talk about that one.
Thank God Sam Bankman-Fried has saved the 2023 news cycle and has started a Substack, which is the best possible news. I mean, if Elon's not going to do anything entertaining in 2023, we know that we can rely on FTX to just like keep this podcast alive. So he publishes a Substack. Hilariously, he when he originally published it, he had a lot of the paid subscription stuff turned on. So everybody was like, wait, is Sam Bankman-Fried just trying to get $8 a month from like 100 people who are going to read his Substack? And in the Substack, he's like, he's just doubling down. I didn't steal funds. I certainly didn't stash billions away, was I think one of the quotes in the Substack. So he's doubling down on the innocence, which is a interesting legal strategy. As somebody who's taken 4 political science undergrad courses in my life, I feel like a political commentator now. Interesting strategy, given that his parents are lawyers, and he basically already admitted a lot of this stuff to a reporter in private DMs on Twitter like a month ago. So it's a total reversal from everything that he said in the past.
So he let's put this into perspective. He stole basically, or claims to have lost tens of billions of dollars. What's the number? Like 65 billion. And then he gave most of the money, donated it to powerful people, invested it in powerful startups, like gave it to all these different folks, tried to invest it in the purchase of Twitter. Now, then when they went insolvent, they couldn't find any money. And now his strategy is to go out and like dox himself and tell everybody on an email service called Substack, here's how I lost all the money. Like, why doesn't he just write like a private like admission of guilt? Why does he need to do it publicly?
I don't know. My favorite part of this Substack is as you scroll, there's like little snippets from what looks like a Google sheet that he put together in preparation of this post. And in one of the snippets, it's like, here's what I think Alameda's balance sheet was. And in all bold, it's like just an estimate.
The disclaimer is definitely going to help out. And look, so Alex, in your next career as a major league grifter, the key thing you need to know from Sam Bankman-Fried is you got to steal a lot of money, not a little bit of money. And then when you do it, you got to make sure you donate it to very powerful people who will then write nice things about you. And then when you do that, then you say, oh, I'm sorry. And you write an email newsletter about it. That's the plan to keep yourself out of jail. Are you good with this?
Thank you. I appreciate it. You should teach a course on this and I'll subscribe. I just don't understand how you find $5 billion. Like, how is it that oh, by the way, guys, like this was hiding in my parents' couch cushion in the $30 million penthouse in the Bahamas. And we found $5 billion for you. Let's return customer funds. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. And the timeline of that is like December of last year, the new management team comes out and says, we've recovered $1 billion. And that they thought that at the time was the extent of the recovery. And now it's $5 billion. So it's just like, I don't know, maybe we'll get all, tens of billions back. Who knows? At this pace, it's like a new 4 billion every 30 days. It's a pretty good pace. And then I guess the Bahamas government still has 425 million in, Bitcoin, ETH, Dogecoin, all this held
Crazy.
in crypto in their custody as well.
None of it makes sense.
I'm just surprised Sam hasn't launched a podcast yet. I mean, every goofball is doing it, right? So like, you should totally do it.
Well, I subscribe to a Substack, so that's $5 more a month that'll go towards customer funds.
Wait, you're paying him $5 a month?
No, I'm just kidding.
That would be amazing.
Gotcha.
I mean, this is just it's just the bizarrest thing ever, right? It's like, I mean, imagine if OJ did this, and started writing an email newsletter about his time with Nicole. It's just,
if the customer funds don't fit, you must acquit, something like this. and if you go to their site, it's interesting. If you go to ftx.com, I think it redirects to this Kroll asset recovery plan that they've basically put together to recover these funds. And it was reported separately that the bankruptcy lawyers are billing, I think, $2,165 an hour on this case. And I mean, you can only imagine, as a law firm, you're going to put as many partners on this case as possible. So it will be interesting. At some point, 10 years from now, there will be some crazy math around we actually recovered $5 billion. We spent $2.5 billion in legal fees over, a decade. And then we're giving small checks to everybody with the remaining $2.5 billion. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, there's politicians to go after here. There's VCs to go after here. So the recovery process outside of just what's in their accounts is going to be a mess.
Yeah. And after all of this, I mean, Bill Ackman's doubling down on his unwavering support. He tweeted, "For those following SBF, this is worth a careful read." So
for those who don't know, Bill Ackman's a really famous investor and hedge fund manager. And it's he's the equivalent of, who was the guy that kept standing behind the Theranos founder all the way through? Elizabeth can do it. God, I'm totally blanking on his name. He's a pretty famous venture capitalist. He's really successful.
Tim something?
Tim Draper.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing? Read the room. Read the room.
What a weird hill to die on, right? So when SBF was bailed out, I think it was $100 million bond. He had to put up, I think it's 10%. I haven't been in and out of jail a lot, despite my antics on Twitter. So I guess you put up 10%. So his parents pledged their house. And then there's two other anonymous, very wealthy people who put up the rest of the money. I mean, Bill Ackman has to be one of them, right? That seems like a no-brainer.
Him and Kevin O'Leary.
It could be.
That's the running conspiracy theory right now. Is him and Kevin O'Leary got SBF out of jail.
Supposedly Kevin O'Leary doesn't have that much money. So we'll see. Anyway, before we move on, there's all these articles about how they're going to go try to recover some of this money the guy donated and invested in all these startups and stuff. The second people realize that money went into some very influential people's pockets, it ain't going to get recovered. Nothing. This is all going to go. Anyway, this may be the episode where I dox myself as a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. So let's go. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So to continue on with the decade of fraud, I think that's the theme for the 2020s so far.
Oh my God.
We have this 30 under 30, Forbes 30 under 30 winner who... Basically, what's her name here? Charlie
Javis. Yeah.
So she's 30 under 30. She started a startup called Frank. And then she figured out that she could sell it to JP Morgan because JP Morgan at the time, JP Morgan Chase was really interested in figuring out how they can sell more student loans to young people in America. This is just starting out great, right? And so she figured out by starting Frank that she could sell her fintech for $175 million, negotiated packages for herself and for her co-founder that were $30 million, a lot of money. And then a few months later, JP Morgan discovered that out of the 4-odd million customers she claimed she had, they were all fake. And they were accusing her of paying a New York City area professor, data scientist, of creating a fake list of customers that look real, but actually when you email them, they turn out to not be real. And that's the whole thing. And to finish it all out.
Do you know how they found out that the accounts were fraudulent?
How?
They had access to her emails. And so as part of the acquisition, they got access to her whole email chain or her whole email history. And they literally read the emails between her and first her employee who declined the request to actually make the fake accounts, but then to the professor data scientist that was literally like, make me 4 million fake accounts. And
I
they found out via
I have it pulled up here. Okay, so she goes and she's trying to get this deal done. They actually have under 300,000 customers. She told JP Morgan they had 4.3 million. So there's a gap of 4 million that they need to come up with. 4 million student customers. So in the emails, she writes to this data science professor, quote, "For names, we want first name and last name independently, and then ensure none of the sampled names are real. Regarding creating physical addresses, should I attempt to fabricate them?" the professor asked her. She replied, quote, "No, I just wouldn't want the street to not exist in the state. Real addresses may not be doable. And if we can't do real addresses, what's the best we can do for that?" So there's this entire exchange that's like published in this court document between her and this professor. And then for all of that legal trouble, the guy bills her $18,000 and she has 4 million fake customers in front of her.
That's wild. That's some really elaborate scheming as well. Like, she knew exactly the parameters she wanted for the people that she was creating for the app. Like, make sure that street doesn't exist in the state of Florida and make the names independent. And like, here's the hours of time I've spent thinking about, instead of like spending the hours of time thinking about how to acquire 4 million customers, she put all that energy into thinking about how to make fraudulent customers.
The best thing about the article I read on this was I read about it in Forbes, who gave her Forbes 30 under 30. And why did she get Forbes 30 under 30? Because she paid them to be on the list, right? These 30 under 30 things and 50 under 50. And by the way, you guys can nominate me for the 50 under 50. I will gladly accept, and please pay on my behalf. But like, they're just a bunch of BS. Like, who thinks these things are actually, like, who trusts these things? And but Forbes is writing about them giving this award to somebody who turned out to be a total fraudster. Like, at which part of this, none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense at all.
There's this, as I was like going down this rabbit hole this afternoon, I was like, I wonder how much the pay to play thing is actually real. Like, can you just pay for a Forbes 30 under 30? So I go down this rabbit hole. I find this article by a woman named Christina Chi, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She's the CEO of this company called Data Bento. She has like a big following on LinkedIn. She went to MIT and she was a member of the Forbes 30 under 30. And I find this article that she has that's titled the How to Get on Forbes 30 under 30 Definitive Guide. And I go, okay, she's a founder. She's been on it. She's going to kind of tell us the inside scoop. The first thing on her list, and I quote, is have a rich daddy. So, I mean, first of all, she's one of us. She's a shit poster. She kind of gets the entire gist. And she was saying that, like, it's not a pay to play, but the idea is there's all of these kind of like ways that you can get on the list. And one of the things that she mentioned was, although it's not explicitly pay to play to get on the list, there is this like $5,000 VIP pass that like hundreds of people pay for every year. And it's like a networking event with the judges where you can go like schmooze them and tell them about your startup. And then if you pay the $5,000 fee, all of a sudden 6 months later, a ton of these startups that like nobody gives a shit about end up on this list.
Wow.
Pretty suspicious.
I get DMs, direct messages all the time on Twitter from people who are like, would you like to win Forbes 30 under 30? Would you like to be in the business journals X under X? By the way, I did win 100 Most Influential Texans, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw that. Business Journal. I did not pay for that. But I totally would. I mean, it's a cool event. They have good food.
Yeah, I mean, I always get those messages. Hey, how would you like your company to be featured in a Forbes article or a Fortune article, or like whoever, whenever they have an opinion or a guest writer for their publication, it's always like opinion piece or guest piece. Like someone will figure out a way to game that. Like I don't think you can pay an actual Forbes writer to write a piece about you, but they give a bunch of editorial privileges to people who can go sell their services. And then, you can use it as some basic recognition, be like, our company was featured in Forbes. And guess what? A lot of people will believe you. They won't know that you were, that your company paid to be written about or was featured in a list. And it takes true good Samaritan heroes like us to expose these schemes.
Whenever I see somebody's like social media profile, they're like, I am a CNBC contributor or I'm a Forbes contributor. I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. I know what's going on here. I'll play your little game. All right, let's move on. So
I do wonder though, like this company is not the only one in financial technology services who has probably created fake accounts in an effort to show growth to investors. Like how many companies do you think are in a similar boat where they've made fraudulent accounts or fake accounts, or they consider their, maybe someone landed on their landing page and they go, oh, that's a sign up. Like we have 1 million signups a month. Like, do you think this ripples into Chime and Revolut and even some of the big fintech companies who are not yet fraudulent, at least?
Dude, I think that fraud in the venture community is 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude than people actually ever talk about. You only ever hear about Theranos or folks like this. You only hear about the big ones when like big money happened, but the small ones are rampant. Like they are all over the place. And you ask yourself, well, why don't we hear about them? Why don't people get arrested? And the reason is because everyone in the chain of those things is incentivized to just sweep it under the rug. Like the VCs, investors, they don't want to have it look like they got robbed. The founders don't want to go to jail. The angels aren't interested in looking stupid. The employees don't want to have it on their resume. And so it's pretty easy for everybody to just be like, well, it doesn't work out 9 out of 10 times. Well, like fraud happens and like you just sweep it under the rug. So it is all the time, especially considering how little like diligence people are doing. Like there's a ton of stuff going on and nobody talks about it.
You don't want to be known as the fund who did no diligence. And then all of a sudden, your companies are being reported back as like LPs don't want to hear that. All they care about is the one winner as well.
Dude, I've heard of some stuff where like you can do all the diligence you want. It's not going to protect you if a founder fakes bank statements, fakes invoices. Like,
I mean, JP Morgan bought it, right? They have the access to the best, theoretically, some of the best diligence out there, right? So they're going to be paying bankers, they're going to be paying consultants to get this deal over the line. I think in the documents they said it was like 8 weeks from the time that the LOI was signed until the time the deal got done. So they're sitting there for 2 months, just like combing through data. Not a single one thought like, hey, from looking at these lines, like these addresses look suspicious, these emails look off. So I think it's way easier to fake data than people assume. I mean, this woman faked 4 million customers for $18,000, right? Mm-hmm. Her co-founder or chief growth officer was involved as well. But like 2 people can go out and just like print these lists. So it's out there, it's prevalent, and I think it's really hard to actually catch.
I totally would have faked him for 10,000. I don't know why she paid so much.
Yeah, I have a Fiverr out right now. If anybody wants to pay me, it's $15 and I'll fake some customer data for you under my pseudonym.
15 times.
Yeah.
All right, you guys want to move on to the air travel stuff?
Let's do it.
Alex, tell us about that.
All right. So this has been a very big month or year so far for the air traffic industry in the US. So first, Southwest, of course, canceled. Oh, I guess that was late last year. But December, Southwest cancels all of their flights. Now, what was it, yesterday or the day before, like 10,000 flights were grounded. They had to, bunch of flights were delayed. They basically had to restart the system called NOTAM, Notice to Air Mission System, because of a corrupt data file is what they're calling it. So basically this piece of software that they've been using for 30 years, Michael has had a corrupt data file, in air quotes is what they're calling it for right now. And what it took was shutting down literally the entire aviation industry for an hour, unplugging the system and plugging it back in, and then it magically worked again.
Yeah. So basically the entire air traffic system, to reset it, requires the same thing you do when your mom's router isn't working correctly. You ask her to unplug it and plug it back in again. Your airplane is using the same techniques.
On newer technology though, like our routers are like 2 years old, and your mom's computer is like maybe 10 years old. Like we have the entire Federal Aviation Administration running on 3.5 decade old equipment, which is I guess I would say it's not surprising. I was going to say it was surprising, but that would be a lie. It's not that surprising.
No, and I think the way that this works, because I was reading about NOTAM, and it's essentially like all these alerts that like pilots and airports and all the air traffic control systems use to get all this data of like all the flights around them. I think it's like how all these different airports and airlines communicate. And I think they literally just upload CSV files or something. Like I don't think any of this is, if I had to guess, like there is some person whose sole job is to go into an Excel sheet, update the list of flights for that day, who's flying it, what the route is. They export to a CSV, they upload into the system. And like, if that actually happened where they just like completely screwed up the CSV file and caused the system to go down. That's worse than Southwest technology issues. Like this is the entire federal aviation industry. It's not just one private company.
So I read several articles about this, and I want to point out some interesting facts. Every article, number one, talks about how the primary and the backup went down, okay, in the United States. At the same time, the Canadian system went down. There's a Canadian system that does exactly this. They both went down at the same time. Okay, so that's suspicious item number one. Suspicious item number two. Every article talking about this, the first quote is not a cyber attack. Not a cyber attack. Like, that wasn't my question. Like, that's not my question at all. Why are you leading with that? So Canada and US goes down at the same time. And there's not, and all the articles say it's not a cyber attack. Like, I don't always wear a tinfoil hat, usually only on days that end in Y. But like, come on, like it needs to be a little harder than this to feel like you see what I'm saying? Like, Chris, save me from my conspiracy.
I completely agree. The way that they paint this story is that all of this crazy stuff happened, and there was like so many errors that happened, and it all kind of lined up. But this also happened in Canada. And I think, it's understandable that, the government's using old technology. You have, human error, you have engineering error where they can like misplace a file or swap it with the wrong one, or like the cord is unplugged over there, the mouse ate through it. But, the fact that this is the first time in history since September 11th that all planes have been grounded. First time, right, in 22 years. So the fact that like all of these things happen at the same time in 20 years, and that every single story is going with the not cyber attack route, I feel you on this one. I think you're right.
Are we going to rename the pod a fourth time?
Are we definitely getting canceled before the fourth pod? But come on, the pattern, like, come on. I mean, okay. Anyway. But look, I mean, I think the other thing with the air travel stuff, this is not surprising to me. Like, it's like anything else in technology. You can either have, fast, cheap, or reliable. Pick two. And guess what we chose? Fast and cheap. Like, it's not going to be reliable. So enjoy your time spent in the Nashville airport. I heard they have a nice Cinnabon there. Like, you should really enjoy the time waiting for your connecting flight.
Travel. I just stay in my house all day. I don't leave.
Oh, well, wait till your kids grow up. Then you'll be trying to get out as quickly as possible. All right, let's move on. You guys want to talk about this? Apple is bringing this AR headset. Who did we decide was going to talk about that one?
Yeah, I'll cover this. So Apple has this like augmented reality AR based headset coming out. And so Bloomberg said that 2023 is, quote, set to be the year of Apple's mixed reality headset and not much else, which is a hilarious headline. And so this evidently has been in development for 7 years. And as I was researching this, there's all these interviews with people from Apple really just like hyping this up, that this is going to be a huge deal. It sounds like the name of it is going to be Reality Pro. So they're sticking with the like Pro naming line here. And the launch has already been moved back. It was supposed to be launched this month. It's going to be moved back to June of this year, allegedly. They're saying that they're going to launch this at the Worldwide Developers Conference. But the best part of this story is that there's all this hype coming out about this headset. And in the interview with an Apple executive, they said, well, Apple still has many kinks to work out with the device, including hardware, software, and services, as well as how it will be marketed and sold. Is this a fucking like seed stage startup? Like they that's all the things. They don't have hardware figured out. They don't have software figured out. They don't have the services figured out. They don't know how they're going to market it, and they don't know how they're going to sell it. Like this is a company trying to get like a seed bridge, not a one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah,
so it's amazing.
It's the first time in at least Apple's recent history that they've just butchered a launch. Like everything that they usually do is clean. They do yearly release cycles at the company. Like they know what they're doing a year in advance. This feels like the one thing that someone's like, fuck it, we got to ship it this year.
I mean, I gave a standing ovation when the 3rd gen Apple Pencil came out. It was, that was a smooth launch. That was a gorgeous product. The stylus thing.
Oh my God.
I love the name though. They're going with XROS. They are really good at branding. Like you have to admit that sounds much cooler than like Facebook's metaverse. So
look, so here's the thing. I'll tell you guys, once you have teenagers trying to get them to take an AirPod out of their ear, impossible. They all walk around with one AirPod in. When this AR headset comes in, I'm never going to talk to my kids again. That's just the way it's going to go. They're not going to look at me. They're not going to hear me. They're not going to talk to me. But look, I don't care what it is. I'm buying one because this is going to solve once and for all my difficulty remembering people's names, right? Chris and Alex. It like
I'm Jeff. How
like,
dare you?
It's just going to be perfect. Like it'll just pop up on the screen. It'll be like, this is that guy you met at Burger King that time. Like I'm totally buying one. Whatever it costs.
How much do we think? Like, let's take bets now and we'll revisit this in 6 months. Like, what do we think the price tag on this device is?
$1,900 at least. $1,900.
Yeah, I was going to say $24.99. This price is right.
I will go with $13.99. I feel like they have to price it like just above the MacBook Pro, but just under like the high-end MacBook Pro.
Dude, every time
MacBook
you're
MacBook
like
Pro.
the cheapest co-host of this podcast. Hey, Alex, I'm going to need you to buy a $42 microphone so you sound good on the pod. I don't know. Is there a cheaper option? Like, come on, dude. This is a podcast. Like give me a
How do I
break.
sound?
You sound
I got
hot.
the $80
look,
pod.
Look, I want the reputation to show here that there's no clothes on your Peloton and you've moved it out of the screen.
Yeah,
like
because some of us use our workout equipment.
We noticed it's migrating out of the way, so you don't get so much crap this podcast. All right, so we got one more. Disney is bringing employees back to the office, mandatory, 4 days a week. Alex, you have this one.
I want to say it's a good idea, but I think that requires people living in Orlando. So I don't know about that. We'll see. Like, I wonder how many people that they hired out of Orlando that now are like, do I have to make the decision to move from wherever I'm living to Orlando, Florida? Which, like, look, I grew up in Florida. Orlando is not a place I would go move to. Like, it's fun to visit. You get to go to Universal, bring the kids, but to force people to go back. I mean, I guess unless you're going back to the LA office, that sounds kind of nice.
I mean, the only rave review of Florida that we've heard on this podcast is you talking about grocery store sandwiches and how good they are. So, I mean, if that's the best thing that we have in Florida, then this is going to be a disaster trying to get all these people back to Orlando.
It is the best thing about Florida. I will go on record to say I think Publix is the number one thing that Florida has going. If they ever lose Publix, like, Florida's fucked. Might as well just like cut it off and float it into the sea.
Sink it in the ocean with California.
So my favorite commentary on this article, which is about coming back 4 days a week, is all like the anonymous boomers on social media responding to it, being like, oh, 4 days a week, you bunch of wimps. Why not make it 5? Get your ass back in there and get to work. It's like, come on. Like,
back when I got to be vice president of my daddy's company, I had to work 9 days a week just to do it. You know, it's all the same thing.
It's the I walked uphill both ways vibe, you know, the spirit of all that.
I mean,
go ahead.
there's got to be a real reason for this, right? Like, clearly there's been a productivity loss, or they haven't actually seen the things that they wanted to over the last few years. And look, like, they've got a legendary CEO back in the seat, and I don't know. I'm hard pressed to argue against what he thinks is right for the company right now. Like, he
is legendary, but I think that this goes back to what I said last week, was that every CEO in bad times has a playbook, and that playbook is very predictable. It's like, what's going wrong? Do we have too many meetings? All right, cut the meetings, like what Shopify did. Are people working from home and spending time with their kids? Like, that's bad. We need to build like office culture and office camaraderie. So I do think that there's a point. I mean, we can get into the like in-person versus remote debate, but I think that like these are just kind of like classic and expected tactics that people are going to use in hard times. And I think we're going to see this across many, many, many other companies, right?
Yeah, maybe. I do think Disney leans more on the spectrum of like need to do creative work to work at Disney. Like, they design theme parks, they design roller coasters, they've got an entire media division, they make toys. I mean, they're literally in like every single industry. And I just don't see how the people who at least need to be creative do that well at home. You know, maybe not everyone needs to go back into the office, but if you're in R&D and you're designing new theme parks and you've got to be around the guests, like, you kind of have to be in person to understand that experience.
I mean, I think also Occam's razor is remote work. There's a number of people that use remote work as a way to not work much. Like I don't know what percentage there are, but there's a big chunk. Like, and they're out there. Like, they're the folks that are like on Reddit talking about how they're working four different jobs at the same time.
For those of you who are audio only right now, Michael is saying this while in a bedroom calling out of his house.
Oh,
So,
I mean, look,
you know.
we're recording this. Like, yeah, case in point, like work hard. But yeah, hey, I'm working at home today.
You know, sometimes I'll be 2 hours deep into scrolling TikTok midday and I'll forget to move my mouse to show that I'm available in Slack. So I hear you.
Oh, super good. All right. Well, I mean, do you not want to insult anybody else in terms of the remote work is the way to go, Alex? I mean, this is your chance.
I think that if we don't address the problem, which is it kind of sucks to stare at people through screens all day to do creative work, then like we're just not being realistic about the downsides to remote work. There's a lot of positives. Like I don't miss commuting and sitting in traffic and having to make small talk every single day, but there is a happy medium, in my opinion, which is hybrid work. You live hopefully like kind of close to your office. You go in 2 days a week to do creative work and kind of get that energy. And then you work 3 days at home. And, you know, when I tweeted a week ago that controversial remote take, a bunch of people were like, well, don't you have friends or family? Like, why do you rely on your coworkers for energy? And it's like, I didn't say these things were mutually exclusive. Like you can enjoy working with your coworkers and also have dinner with your family. But you know, I think no one is being honest if they say that remote work has no downsides.
It is fascinating talking to remote work zealots because like, it's like trying to convince somebody God doesn't exist. They're just like, no, you're wrong. Like, this is how it works. You should know. Or, hey, Teslas aren't very good cars. It's like, no, Elon is God. Like, this is the way this works. Like, I don't even go there, right? Don't even go there.
And
it's just like,
I severely underestimated the number of people who just fucking hate their job and their coworkers. Like I think people are like,
that's a big part of it.
Never have to see my coworkers again. Like, hell yeah. Like, oh, only have to put in the minimal effort. Like, hell yeah. Maybe we're just privileged working in tech that we enjoy our jobs and we're more mission driven. But I was not expecting the number of people to say like, oh, you're telling me I never have to talk to a coworker again? Like, that sounds incredible. I was like, oh, okay. That's a perspective I had never considered.
It's nuts. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there.
I think we forgot one thing. We have our first advertiser, and Chris is going to do the ad reel for us. So, Chris, would you like to please introduce our advertiser for the first podcast?
The first advertiser is Quibi. Quibi. Do you ever struggle with YouTube or the other million options that you have to watch from your mobile device? Well, with Quibi, you can get short form content by twisting your device sideways and watching it. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know enough about Quibi. What's their value add? We need to like print out the ad copy next time.
I love it. I mean, I used it this morning. I was commuting from the bed to the bathroom. I watched a short clip. It was amazing for my commute. Highly recommend downloading the Quibi app. It's available. Just use our promo code. What's the new name that we're going with? The Outsiders. Use the promo code The Outsiders to get a free month of Quibi and the rest of Quibi's life.
Cool. So, and if you've made it this far and you listen, do us a favor, leave us a review as high or as low as you want. Doesn't really matter. 1 star, 5 stars. We just need the attention. And click subscribe on your podcast app. We're working hard to keep making this really good. And you doing that will help us get it out there more. So subscribe and whatever, reviews. So awesome. All right, everybody. Talk to you next week.